The hour is 7 o'clock, having arrived. I'm going to call the council to order. Let the roll reflect that all council members are in attendance and a quorum has been established. We have a couple of presentations tonight. First, we have Stacy from Tennis Sanitation to give us a report on the green team. Stacy, welcome to the meeting. We're very glad to have you here.
Good evening. So tonight we have Ryan here to accept the proceeds for the second quarter. Ryan is from the YAA, the youth, Hastings Youth Athletics. They've collected a total of 34.57 tons. Their proceeds will be $518.55.
Congratulations. Would you like to say a few words?
Thank you. For those that don't know, HYA is Hastings Youth Athletic Association in town that it gives the opportunity for boys and girls to play softball and baseball. So we were able to utilize the tennis sanitation with the cardboard recycling at Terry's Hardware for the quarter, correct? Mm-hmm. And the proceeds will be going to probably equipment, uniforms, and whatever it is that we need. So thank you very much.
Congratulations and thank you very much. Appreciate your fine work.
Thank you so much. And then I've also presented Melanie with the revenue share as well. That's $2,969.43.
Okay, and who's the green team up next?
We have another Boy Scout troop.
Fantastic.
Yes.
We'll look forward to that report in a few months.
Absolutely. We'll see you then.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Stacy. Next on the agenda, we're privileged tonight to have our state representative here, Representative Tony Jurgens. And Tony, so glad to see us again, sir, and welcome to our city council meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. It's good to be here. First term in the legislature, and this is my first legislative update, so I'll welcome questions at the end. If I were to boil our legislative session down to anything this year, it was just that we got a lot of stuff done this year. Now you can look at the bills that we passed. There might be some things in there that you don't like. There might be some things that you like that you wish would have been in there that weren't in there. And I get that. Those are all valid discussions to have. But the bottom line is we got a lot of work done this year. It was a budget year, so we passed our budget bills, a tax bill, agriculture bill, transportation bill, health and human services, environment, jobs and energy. Just that all of the budget bills that needed to get passed were passed. In addition to that, we did some of the work that didn't quite make it all the way to the finish line last year with the bonding bill. This isn't, as many of you know, typically a bonding year, but the very last order of business before we adjourned was nearly $1 billion in bonding projects. Of course, one of the biggest topic that we talked about all last year was the health care. And so right out of the chute this year, we did pass some premium relief, 25% premium relief for those in the individual market. It's a lot of money. Not one of us was happy about spending over $300 million to do that, but we felt like we had to do that. We had to give the premium relief to the people that were in that individual market that are seeing double-digit premium increases year after year. Later in the session, we also passed a reinsurance bill. Insurance is the law of large numbers. And when you have the sickest Minnesotans in that same pool with everyone else, it's going to bring everybody's premiums up. So what this reinsurance does is the state is helping out for those the sickest among us that are costing the insurers the most in paying out the premiums or paying out for the losses. And so the governor's budget people said we should see a 16 to 18% reduction in individual premium as a result of that. So a little too soon to tell, but very soon we should be able to see if that is doing what it's supposed to do. From an education standpoint, there's a couple things in addition to just the general funding for the education at a 2% increase over the next 2 years, which is a good increase. We always want it to be a little bit more, but we were happy that we ended up at 2%. But two other things that I was happy about is one of them is a teacher licensure bill. One of the things that I heard from school districts before even getting elected was a difficulty in finding teachers and getting teachers, especially if they're coming in from out of state and going through the process to get licensed here in Minnesota. We streamlined the process, brought that into a new licensure group instead of having the licensure be the responsibility of two different groups, and put it into a tiered system so that the teachers coming in can work up to the level of Tier 4. We think that that's going to help. We expect that that's going to help from a licensure standpoint and help the school districts be able to find the teachers that they need. The other thing that we did was clarified the last in, first out. If that school districts find themselves in a position where they need to lay off teachers, the previous law said that the school districts and the teachers' unions may negotiate the procedures for those, the process for those layoffs. And absent that, it would fall back to state language that says the last in, first out. The last person to hire would be the first one laid off. What we did is we took out that fallback language, and instead of saying that school districts and the teachers' unions may negotiate, we said they must negotiate. They can still agree that last in, first out is what's best for their school district, but instead of putting that in state language as a fallback, we're saying that you need to negotiate that as part of your collective bargaining. And also Sunday sales. That was a big thing to a lot of people. We got that done early on in the session. And then the other thing that it took us a while and a couple of different tries at it, but we finally passed Real ID law. We were one of the last states to do that. What was good about this, there were people on both sides of the aisle that disliked this for one reason or another. But in the end, the product or the bill that was signed into law gives people an option. So if you want a Real ID compliant license, which will allow you to get onto into federal buildings, onto military bases, and more importantly to many people is the ability to fly commercial airlines, you have the option now, or you will have the option in 2018 to get that Real ID compliant license. If you don't want it, if you think that's an overreach by the federal government, you don't have to get it. It's your choice. So there's, in a quick nutshell, that was a lot of work that we got done in 5 months. I want to thank most of you that reached out to me. I think all of you reached out to me at one time or another. Some of you came in when I asked for help in testifying in committees. I appreciate that. I think that we can all do our jobs better if we keep those lines of communication open. Mr. Mayor, it's nice having you so close by, because I stopped in many times with questions, bounced things off of you to see what you thought of different things. So I appreciate your accessibility as well. And if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Okay, Council, if we have any questions, I just want to start out by first, I want to thank you, Representative Jurgens, for your help in assisting the city of Hastings on Highway 316 and the resolution of Highway 316 in regards to the 35 miles per hour and maintaining that. Your help in that effort was invaluable, and we appreciate those efforts. Also, our increased LGA from the current tax bill that passed, that was very appreciative here at the city of Hastings to see that LGA go up from 600 to 700,000. We always find that valuable, and we certainly will pass those savings along when we can. And also, we look forward to meeting with you maybe in the fall as we put together a legislative request. I know a couple of things that are going to be before our city councils. One, you have already introduced a bill in regards to this city hall and updating city hall in terms of, not really updating, but critical infrastructure to the building, in particular the tuck pointing that needs to take place. And other requests along the City Hall campus. And so thank you for introducing that legislation. We look forward to working with you on the bonding request in 2018 session. And also, we're going to have a little discussion about starting the discussions again about the trail that we have in Hastings that would connect to Red Wing. And we think it's a valuable economic development tool to continue. As we know, we've seen the trail expand all the way basically to St. Paul. It will be within a year. And continue, we right now in the city of Hastings have the trail that goes north of the bridge, and we'll go to Prescott, and the future St. Croix Trail. And we'd like to continue that with the trail that would leave Hastings and into Red Wing, and be part of a maybe legacy funding or whatever. Talk to our partners with the county and the Department of Natural Resources or Association of Trail, Minnesota Trail. So we hope to have those discussions with you in the future as well.
I look forward to working with you on those issues and any other issues that come up. And with respect to Highway 316, that's a great example of the citizens who have a concern and bringing it forward. And I said many times during the legislative session when we were talking about this, that all started when I was door knocking in that area, and I had citizens tell me, if you get elected, what are you gonna do about this road here? It's not safe the way it is. And then, of course, when MnDOT announced that they were gonna raise the speed limit, a lot of those same people started emailing me. So it was something I was already aware of because the citizens got involved and made it known. And so I'm glad that we got at least that first step to keep the speed limit where it is. Looking forward to the next few years as the discussions go forward with how to make that road safer overall. Because that's really what it's been about all along, was the safety.
Yeah, well said. Council, is there any questions or comments that you'd like to make? Any questions or comments? Okay. Councilmember Fulch?
Thank you, Your Honor. Representative Jerkins, I would also like to thank you and echo what Mayor Hicks has said in regards to helping with Highway 316 in Ward 1. It was greatly appreciated, and thank you for being successful and pushing that forward. I did have a question in regards to transportation, something that the council's been dealing with the last, several months. We've been listening to what's been going on at the county, and then also that there has been kind of a change in plans, for the Red Rock corridor and bringing transit down into Hastings. And so I was just curious, what have been your efforts to help get transportation funding so that we can pull mass transit down into Hastings?
Well, part of that is gonna be whether or not Hastings wants to join the taxing district for mass transit. And Red Rock, it means different things to different people. When it first started out, Red Rock was a commuter rail system, and that is, I don't think anything that we'll ever see in my lifetime. But the next step then would be, is it bus rapid transit, or is it just regular all-day bus routes? So ready to work with you on that, if you want to go forward with that. And right now there's some expansion to bus lines from the Cottage Grove area and the Newport area, which isn't right here in downtown Hastings, but it might serve some of the residents that want to drive up and park in those lots and take the expanded bus service to both Minneapolis and St. Paul.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Okay,
Well, thank
thanks.
you, Representative Jurgens. We
Thanks for
appreciate
having
you
me. I
being here this
appreciate it.
evening. Thank you. Okay, council, before us, we have the minutes of the regular council meeting on July 10th, 2017. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes of those meetings? Okay, seeing none, they stand approved. We have the consent agenda. Council, what's your wish? Councilmember Balsanic makes a motion to approve, seconded by Councilmember Vaughn. That motion is now before the body. Is there any discussion to that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails. Next, we have, under Public Works, the monument sign design approval. Nick, welcome to the meeting. Very glad to have you here.
Hi, thanks, Mayor Hicks. Good evening, City Council members. As you alluded to, we have a recommendation for an approval on a monument sign concept. This is something that we began work on earlier in the year. It's initiative taken by the council in the budget for 2017 to update the monument signage upon entry into the city at various points. The first of which would go this year and be situated near the intersection of 3rd Street and Highway 61 on the southbound side, kind of where the existing wooden sign is right now. Working through that, we developed a couple of concepts that reflected some of the more recent landmark features in and around the downtown area and the new bridge, and used those as inspirations on the design, and developed a couple different styles for consideration. Took those before the planning committee about a month or so ago, I think it was. Got some feedback there, but then also did a public poll for a preference on that. And after conducting the poll, the feedback that was given by that was more favorable towards the custom style sign. This one, the image of it is in your packets. It kind of reflects the arch form of the new bridge and some of the colors and limestone texturing on the base of it, and features the city logo in the center. So that was a 60-40 split, over 2,100 folks participating in that online poll. So that's the recommended option for your consideration. With that, we would, if we go forward, the installation timeline would be sometime this fall. There's a little bit of a permitting process that we have to work through MnDOT for which is the next item on the agenda. So I'll turn it back to you, Mayor Hicks.
Okay, thank you, Nick, for the presentation. Council, this item is before us. What's your wish? A lot of thinking going on here, a lot of thought process. That's good. Councilmember Vaughn.
I think as chair of the planning committee, I think I was impressed with what came in front of us. I really like what the product is made out of, and I appreciate the price tag, because I think it does include landscape. It needs to be pointed out, landscaping, lighting, and I think that's important that we do this. And I still think it's important for our gateways. I think it's going to help with our tourism, but it also just helps our residents know when we come in home that this is going to kind of mark our boundaries. I think it's a great way to introduce the community. So, and personally, I think they were due. The other ones were tired. So I encourage us to stay on top of these and keep them looking great. With that, I make a motion to approve.
Approve staff recommendation?
That's correct.
Okay, okay, that motion has been moved. Is there a second to that motion? Second by Councilmember Liefeld. That motion is now before the body. Discussion to that motion. Councilmember Brox.
I like the designs, they're very nice. And the only thing, I guess the only feedback I have in looking at the markups or the concepts is that I feel like the logo's too small. Seems like I just want to make sure that it can be seen. And maybe that's just the way that I'm conceptualizing it in my head. But I just feel like the center graphic could be like twice the size that it is, just to make sure that people can see the name, because it's going to be in orange. So I'm just worried about that standing out, and I know nothing about sign design. I don't presume to know anything about sign design. I want to make sure that when people go by it from the bridge, they can read it, and that's my only concern.
Okay, is there further discussion? Council, I'll just say, you know, when we started this process, and I really compliment staff, and the designs are great. I'll echo Councilmember Vaughn's statement. The material's great. I really enjoy. I think the two proposals we have before us are unique. I started out liking the traditional sign better. I thought, oh, you know, that looks pretty good. It's got those City Hall columns and stuff. And then I started talking to some folks during Rivertown days, and I heard so many compliments about the custom sign. They said, Mayor, you're thinking it wrong. I said, well, what do you like about that? He says, well, you know, Hastings seems to be on the move. You know, things are changing downtown. We're talking about different things around the community and the Main Street. That custom sign looks like things are changing instead of looking so traditional. So let's get something, you know, that was one of the comments that was brought forward to me. I said, you know what? I'm sold. I'm voting for the custom sign. So it does help to get out there and speak to our constituency, doesn't it? So I think the custom sign is a good motion. Is there any further discussion? Councilmember Fulch?
Thank you, Mayor. I was just curious if there was going to be any renderings of what the landscaping was going to look around it, or just curious, because I've been saying for a while I would really love to see more of a gateway presence and feel when you come across the bridge, you know, of that immediate area from the bridge to, like, you know, 5th, 6th Street there. And so I think it's awesome. I have to say that to begin with. But I just want to make sure that it's not something that is going to be so quick to pass. You know, something that has a little pop and pizzazz to it. That's all.
Okay, all right, duly noted. Okay, Councilmember Lund.
We're all becoming professional designers. I have a question for you on the I guess bouncing off of previous point. Is the word Hastings or other words, are they kind of off of the sign a little bit, or is it going to be painted on, or how does that work?
Great question. That's a good point. The letters are dimensional, I think is what the term they use is. So they're attached separately. It's not embedded into the surface or painted on there. There's a little bit of mass to them.
Okay. Is there any further discussion to the motion before the body? Councilmember Balsanic.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I'm just really pleased that we are moving forward with this new sign. As I travel back and forth to Rochester to visit family, and I see the sign for Cannon Falls, and I see the sign for Pine City, and Zumbrota. I could keep on going, I suppose. Sound like a whistle stop. It's got that progressive sort of feel to it when you see that. They are lighted, and I'm glad to see that we're going to do that. And I am pleased now that you said that it would be raised lettering on there. I think that that will really add a nice sense of professionalism to it as well. And duly noted, as Your Honor said, this is a very progressive style that we are hopefully choosing here when it does come to a vote. And with everything that is going on in the city, downtown, the Rotary Pavilion, with the Hudson Project, Art Space, this is a nice, a very nice addition to what we would like people to think about Hastings when they come into town. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further discussion to the motion before the body? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails. Okay, Nick, then we have the limited use permit application for the monument sign.
Yeah, I'll just spend a few seconds on this, as I alluded to earlier. We do have to go through a permitting process with MnDOT to get the official permission to put it in that space. It is part of their right-of-way and road system. The ramp is kind of on their turf, so to speak. So have to apply for that, and the initial step towards that is adopting a resolution to enter into that agreement with them. So we kick it in for review, and apparently it's about a month or so, probably less, that we'll get the feedback on that and then move forward.
Okay, council, what's your wish? Councilmember Vaughn makes a motion. Makes a motion to approve. Is second by Councilmember Lund. That motion is now before the body. Is there any further discussion to that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails. Next, we have authorized submittal of the revised grant agreement to the Metropolitan Council. John, welcome to the meeting. Glad to have you here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. I'm going to pull up a presentation here to show some of the changes in the building that we're looking at here, so bear with me for a moment. There we go. So before us tonight, we have two actions related to a couple of grant agreements that we have been fortunate to receive for the Hudson manufacturing property. I know that this has had a very storied history, and we learned a little bit more about that at our special workshop meeting last week, where we sat down with Hedra and members of the Confluence Development Team to look at the site itself and some of the changes that they're proposing. The action that we have before you tonight is twofold. There are to amend two grant agreements that we have for the site for Metropolitan Council. One we received in 2014 for $980,000 for a landscaping and exterior renovation of the site. And in 2015, we received almost $1.5 million for a parking ramp facility. Now, I'm going to go through a couple of the changes that we're looking for, that are being proposed for this. The reason we're bringing this for you tonight is to get the authorization for the grant agreement. What we're not asking for tonight is final approval of either of these items. These will need to come back in more detailed plans for Planning Commission and Council consideration in the near future here. But we wanted to ensure that before we brought these forward to Metropolitan Council for the grant amendment, that the council was comfortable with them. We also similarly took these before Hedra at their last meeting as well. They gave authorization to move forward with the site. So we have two things that we're looking at here. One is the landscape plan here. This is the landscape plan that is being proposed today. As you can see here, you can't see anything actually. Let's try this. There we go, much better. This is the site itself, the Hudson building shown here, Mississippi River towards the top, 2nd Street to the south here. So it would be the renovation, as you all know, of the existing building which is there, about 100,000 square feet, and then the landscape plan here. The changes that we've seen in the landscape plan are reflective of requirements that were put forward by SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office. A major part of the funding for this site is historic tax credits. And in order to receive the tax credits, SHPO has a hand in reviewing the site. one of the comments that they made is they wanted the park plan to be more reflective of the industrial history of the site. And so Confluence has moved forward to make a couple of changes. One of them over here towards the northwest corner, where there's a number of pylons that were left from a previous addition that was demolished. These would be used to support a deck area and stormwater treatment underneath there. So using some of that portion of the old building. And then creation of a plaza area here just to the west of this wing. And a redesign of this area towards the east, from kind of a tiered fire pit area to a plaza, open space. What Confluence has shared is they're looking at the Surly Brewery site in Minneapolis and really using that as a model for how this outside area here would be designed. We have a parking area here which would be surface, and a few more parking spaces up here as well. So that's what the landscape area looks today. Here's some pictures of it here. So this gives an idea of what some of that plaza space would look like towards the northeast corner of the building. This would be looking towards the northeast. Imagine the bridge over here someplace. This would be the main site and how that would look. And then a view here from where the observation platform over those pylons would be. This being the main trail along the Mississippi River at this location. Formerly, well, I guess I don't have former pictures of the site on this one, but formerly it was a more manicured area. So we're looking at this design here moving into the future. On the other end of it was the parking ramp. Originally, we received funding to put the parking ramp in this location here, about 155 stalls, 2 levels. As you're aware of the area, 2nd Street and Lockadam Road is quite a distance in elevation above this, so to fit it in the hole here. In looking at that site, Confluence thought that this would be a better site for redevelopment in the future, and that the site that they purchased here, the former First National Bank site, may be a better site for the parking ramp itself. So what they are planning to do would look something like this. If you can imagine the First National Bank building, the confines of that are probably something like this. And so where the building sits right now would be covered spaces, about 36, I think, altogether here. And then a 2nd-story deck on top of that, which would extend further to the south. As you are aware of the site, the grade somewhat shifts to the south up, so it would take advantage of the existing grade there. As far as what this would look like compared to what we see today, the elevation of the building, the footprint of the building would be very similar, although it would be extended a little bit further to the east towards the bridge. The height of the building that's there now would be lower with the parking ramp today, and these would be some of the elevations that would be shown here. So you'd see this view from 2nd Street looking into it. These would be some of the side elevations there. We also took a look at parking on the site, doing a comparison of parking between what was approved in 2015 and what is proposed here. And the parking is just about the same, albeit there's been 2 additional spaces added. So the parking, we believe, is adequate for the site itself. As mentioned previously too, one of the changes also that is being highly considered for the site is the transformation from primarily apartment units throughout the facility to a hotel. And so looking at the number of spaces provided for the hotel and what's proposed, we'll need to go through the numbers in more detail, but we believe that the parking would be adequate for that as well. And so that is the proposal that we have here before us tonight. We've got representatives here, Pat Regan and his development team from Confluence Development, if you have any questions for them. What we're looking for is twofold. One is authorization to submit the revised grant agreements, and 2, any other general directional comments that you may have related to the site plans here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Let's open up this for discussion. Councilmember Vaughn?
Thank you, Your Honor. I have 2 questions. John, I think you can help answer them. I heard some dollar figures of $980,000 grant and $1.5 million Met Council grant. What if there's an overrun? What if the price of the park is more than that, or what if the parking ramp's more than that? Is the city going to be asked to be helping to finish that project?
Councilmember, the grant agreements would be for the going towards the purchase price. There's probably gonna be fees in addition to that, or costs in addition to that. I'm not aware of any asks at this point from the city to participate in any of those. We are under the assumption that those would be privately financed.
Okay, and then my follow-up question is, who's gonna maintain the parking ramp once it's built? Do we plow it as a city? Do we have to replace it someday? Who's gonna be the financial responsibility for that?
Sure. Very good question on that one. We've been talking in very general terms as to how we would move forward with an agreement on maintenance responsibilities for that. Prior to any transfer of the building, we'll have to have that resolved, so that's something still in process.
Okay. Further discussion, council? Councilmember Balsanic.
Thank you, Your Honor. This may be asking a question too far in advance, but I see here on the upper level of the parking ramp, new signage. What does that refer to?
New signage. Is that the one I'm looking at here?
I'm looking at this drawing
Oh, okay.
right here.
All right. Pat, the new signage that looked at, is that part of the pole signage there previously? Yes. Okay, yeah, they'd be looking to reuse the pole sign that First National Bank has on the site, repurposing that.
Okay, and then in terms of, okay, so now we're talking a hotel. And it looks like there's going to be some retail in there and so forth. How does all that sit with the State Historic Preservation Commission in terms of the kinds of signs that can be attached to the building? And I know we've got ordinances here in the city and so forth. How are we going to approach all of that?
Sure, council member. We have, as you alluded to, our own sign regulations specific to historic districts that is much more strict than the general sign requirements that we have throughout town. As far as the SHPO review of the signage for the building, looking to Pat to see if you recall any specific discussions that you've had with them on signage.
Actually, I'm told they're not real restrictive, or they don't have real strict rules for the signage. They let that happen locally.
Okay.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Councilmember Lund.
Thank you, Your Honor. You said that the height would be lower, is that right, than the current building?
Correct.
Okay. And then, other question I know that I've asked you, so maybe we'll have to ask further down the line here, but the second level, is that going to be built in a way that will allow for an additional level if that ever comes to be? I mean, it may be adequate for the time being, but we're looking for a successful endeavor here, and we may be looking at a point where we need to go up, not out. So hopefully we can find a way to build that in now so it's more cost effective in the coming years for that. So,
Pat, do you want to address that? Thanks.
Mr. Regan, welcome to the meeting. We're glad to have you here and your team,
Honor.
Confluence. Thank
Council
you.
members, thanks, John, for the description. Regarding the height, we are directing Greg Stotko and the structural engineers to build the foundation. That building is on bedrock, like the Hudson building is, so is the First National Bank building. So we think that we'll be able to make the foundation footings larger. We would hope someday we would be here in front of you asking for permission to go higher on that parking ramp. And what we use it for, or what the city wants to use it for, we think is something to be open-minded on at this point. But yes, we do intend to make the footings structurally heavy enough so we can go higher on that site. As far as the signage, I might add to what John said. I can remember standing here talking about special signs we wanted at Schoolhouse Square, and we all were not really sure where we were headed with it, but we ended up with raised letters and kind of a standardized sign, and we worked with a professional designer to show the city what we had in mind in our mind's eye, and it's a little early for us to ask you or to suggest to the city how exactly we'd like to see that going forward on this project. Regarding the First National Bank sign, since we purchased that site, one of the values we see in it is that main sign that sits up there now, you know, a story and a half, and when you come across the bridge, we think that's a key positive factor for us to direct traffic into the whole downtown and in particular into our site. So we are planning to use that in the future and to show you what we think it should look like, and we still need the exact users. You know, we need the customers to help us with that. We are engaging a professional branding and marketing firm that is known to the people we've been talking about as being the hospitality operators. So we're moving forward with that ourselves now, and would plan to have some good information for you, much like you went through with the monument signs before it's all wrapped up. Personally, I like the historic time period where they had the black band around the building where they said farm implements and sprayers and agricultural equipment. I like that motif myself, and my partners know it, but it'll be a joint decision, and we'll have a lot of professional help before we show that to you. There was another question, Councilmember Vaughn, I think, asked about the parking ramp and the top floor. Our request at this point is that the city would operate and maintain and repair and someday replace the top floor, but it's a good place for that to happen because that's where the public parking would be. We'd like to have the 36 stalls on the Second Street level remain controlled by the hotel and our development. And we have to provide the 99 stalls per the Met Council agreement, and the rest of those stalls are provided, I don't know if do I have a pointer? They'd be provided here on the west park next to the building, just to the west of the building. We think that these spaces here, in our view, would remain available to the public at all times. And so if somebody wants to come down during the middle of the day or lunch break or whatever and pull in and face the river and look at that park, those spaces there should, and our idea is that they would stay available to the public. If there was older people or families with young children, they'd be able to get right up next to the park and have good direct access to the park. And if there's overflow onto this site, which we see for hotel parking, that's fine. And if there's overflow, I think we have 86 stalls, and those numbers they may go up, they may go down, but it won't be substantial. They may go up by 2 or 4. We actually think we gained back 3 or 4 stalls right here near that sign we were talking about. If we build the retaining wall in a certain fashion, we might gain back these stalls on the alleyway there, if you will. So the provision of the 99 public spaces, we meet that provision as long as we count these here along the West Park as among those. And we actually think it'll be cheaper to build a ramp on this site because it's really only half of a ramp instead of a full ramp because of the elevation of the ground. We'll actually be building about half of those public spaces on the surface rather than having to put concrete pillars and whatnot under them. And then we would hope that the Met Council would let us include this area in part of that parking ramp grant expenditure. So, and the rest of it, the other grant goes for these 2 park areas, which is what we always had in mind. And we were showing a lot of curvy lines in the past. Now we've kind of squared them off and made them sharp angles. That was in response to the SHPO. And I want to also clarify that the relocation of the parking ramp over here across the street was in response to the SHPO's comments asking us not to block this western facade of the original building. That's an architectural feature they want people to be able to continue to see, and we had internal discussions about that for a long time. I really personally think the parking ramp in this location is really a big plus for the entire downtown, rather than have people go west of our building. If they want to use those stalls on the top when they're coming across the bridge, they'll come down a stair here and they can go wherever they want to downtown. I think it's a better location for everybody. So, if there are any other questions?
More questions?
Sure
Councilmember
happy to-
Balsanic?
Thank you, Your Honor. Okay, in terms of responsibility here, the Met Council appropriated the money for the parking ramp to the city.
Correct.
Should the city put that parking ramp out on bid then?
John, maybe you want to explain that process for the grant?
I missed the last part, Joe,
Well, the city is responsible for building the parking ramp.
No.
We are the grant recipient on it, so we
We
could
are the
pass-
grant recipient.
Right, so
Okay.
we would presumably pass the funding through to Pat's group for construction on it. I don't believe that we would be involved in any bidding or contracting for the facility.
Well, you don't believe, but I'm sorry. Shouldn't it go out for bid? I mean,
There will be, with the grant agreement itself, there's certain stipulations as to how the money is spent and qualifications and other things related to it. So we'd have to abide by that grant agreement itself. As far as the public bidding process and how that would work with this type of facility, I'd have to refer to those documents again. I don't know the answer to that, council member.
Would I be correct, John, in saying that when this went before Met Council, that was their total expectation, that it would go through the city and have the contractor build the spot because it was on their development proposal?
Right.
well, I'm sorry.
I mean, that was the process, I'm just saying,
You-
that the Met Council approved those dollars knowing that set of circumstances. I'm just laying out a fact. I'm not trying to persuade one way or another. That's just a fact.
I guess I just never heard of such a thing. It just seems to me that it should be let out on bid, rather than just saying, all right, it's going to go to the contractor. I mean, I'm sure that the developer would do a great job, but we always put things out on bid, street improvements, if and when we renovate our city hall, on and on and on. It should be a bid process.
Well, the lower half of the parking ramp will not be city parking. I mean, will not be public parking. It'll be owned by the hotel.
Sure, and part of that too is with other grant agreements that we've had in which the developers have spent the money, we've had subrecipient agreements which will lay out the parameters of use between the city and the developer itself. So that would likely be a situation that we'd have on this type of project, is we would have that subrecipient agreement that would lay that out in more detail. With the grant agreement, grant agreement, we're being allotted the funds to be used for $1.5 million worth of parking ramp costs on that. So that money would go into the pool. But how we eventually spend that money, it's being granted to us, not directly to the developers. We could do further determinations of that through a subrecipient agreement. And we've done a couple of those, for example, at the Art Space project, when we've done some of the environmental projects. And we had a similar LCDA grant there that we did a subrecipient agreement for.
Well, I just go back to the simplest statement, which is we've got public funds And it just seems to me we should put them out on bid. That's the way we always do it as a city.
Your Honor, and council members, perhaps just for clarification, since we don't have the grant agreement in front of us, council member, staff will go back and review that and make sure we clarify with the council on what any restrictions are, and make sure that we are in compliance with that, whatever Met Council requires.
Well, that's what I would like to see, because, I mean, with all due respect to the developer, it throws $1.5 million project into their lap without any view from competing enterprises. And again, I'm sure the developer would do a marvelous job, but if we get a bid that is lower, if it were to go out on bid and the bid was lower than what we have allocated. I mean, I'm on the Public Works Committee of the council, and we get our street improvement projects set up on a year-by-year basis, and Public Works says, well, we think this is what it's gonna cost, we're gonna put it out on bid. You know, we think $2.5 million, and then the bids come in and they're 100,000 less, 150,000 less, so forth, and, you know, you weigh them back and forth, and you make your decision based on that. But it just seems that for the sake of competition, that it should be let out on bid. So yes, I would definitely like staff to report back on that and find out exactly. And Your Honor, I know you said that there will be parking for Confluence that will be, you know, designated for them, but it's still public money that is being spent to build it. So I just want to make sure that we're not.
Right. Well, there was public dollars to clean it up environmentally, probably what, $3 million?
Sure.
So there's a lot of public dollars involved in this project.
Oh, yes, there certainly has been, and much time taken to, you know, to get all of this together. So, you know, let's not, I don't want a flat tire along the way. Let's make sure that we're doing this the right way. And if allocation of funding is to be a certain way, let's make sure that we're not thinking that it's right, but that it is right. Thank you.
Okay? Is there further discussion? Councilmember Brox.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a question, but I think it's actually for Nick Egger about future equipment needed. I can't think off the top of my head of any other parking ramps that are used in the city of Hastings. Are there any special pieces of equipment or anything that we would need to maintain a lot that we don't currently have? Or is it just the same equipment that we already have purchased?
We deploy a variety of things. I think what we have in our arsenal, the surface of this isn't unlike some of the other lots that are at grade that we have around town that we
Right.
wouldn't. Well, looking at it in great detail, and to be honest, first time I heard tonight that maybe there was a consideration that it would be the cities. We hadn't caught up on that, so, you know, we'd look at it a little closer as it goes further down the line, but at this point, I don't think so.
Thank you. And I know we probably haven't planned for that. It's just one of the things that popped into my mind when we're talking about future costs. We're thinking about maintenance of this, and it's just something I wanted to bring up to keep on our radar so that we don't forget about it, because it will be another investment that we have to make. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay? Councilmember Fulch?
Your Honor. John, I might have, perhaps this question goes towards you, and I have a couple. So my first is, what is the total cost that is going to be associated with the parking ramp? If we're contributing $1.5 million, what's that going towards?
The total cost of the ramp, Pat, is somewhere around 3. I'm trying to remember what the cost of that was, the total parking ramp cost.
My response would be that we plan to get it done for the amount of the grant. We are pretty confident, especially with the ramp being relocated over to the First National Bank site, and the fact that the ramp itself is half as large as what we were attempting to do on the west side of the building there in the past. And we do have some preliminary pricing from Greg Stotko at Stotko Speedling. We are working on the design, subject to this approval, on the design details of the ramp on the First National Bank site, and we will have pricing for it. We actually think we're in better shape with this many dollars with the ramp and the new location. And I would clarify another earlier question. If that turns out not to be enough money and the purpose is for a private purpose for our development, we are planning on spending the extra funds that take care of the private, anything that serves us exclusively would be that ball would be in our court to pay for.
Thank you for that. And, okay, so first of all, I want to say I am very pleased that you're moving the parking ramp to the location at the First National Bank building. And I want to say when we went on the tour 2 weeks ago, it was really exciting to listen to your vision. And so I have lots of positive sentiments I want to give to you. But I also just have a little concern. After we were leaving, Councilmember Lund and I were walking through the parking ramp, and what we noticed, it was the parking lot that's underneath the bridge there, and we looked around, and the whole place was full already, which was exciting, right? That downtown is doing well, but at the same time, it was like, oh boy, geez, we're already kind of stretched here, and we do have a new brewery that's going to be, opening up, and we're hoping for great things in our downtown, right? And so I was curious as to how those 99 public stalls were calculated, if that was based on some kind of formula associated with the number of units or use, or because I know that you had said during our tour that you were hoping also to put a banquet facility in there, and I thought that's great. We could use a nice wedding venue or conference venue and things like that, but then, geez, weddings, a couple hundred people, and so are conferences, and so I was just then beginning to wonder how did we come up with 99 public stalls for a facility that we're hoping is going to be very successful?
Sure. And I can begin to address that, Council Member. The 99 is part of a larger number of about 220 to 230 parking spaces that we had calculated for the entire site. Now, the entire site would be the hotel banquet facility, or what was previously the apartments, the banquet facility, retail space, restaurant space, and then the bank office space as it functions today. And so we have a way that we make a determination on parking based upon some other Urban Land Use Institute studies for downtown areas. So we went through that to make the determination for the need. Now, as far as the 99 out of that's part of the parking ramp facility itself, there was a portion of that parking ramp facility that the developer wanted to have private itself for the exclusive use of the tenants. Those could not be funded through the Metropolitan Council grant because those had to be open to the general public. And so with the original 155 lot ramp that we had originally, it was 56 of those spots that were allocated for apartment users, 99 that would be open to the general public. So only that portion was eligible to be financed from this grant.
Okay. All right. Well, I would just like to make it duly noted that I echo what Councilmember Lund was saying. I'm also concerned about future development because we can't develop anymore on Second Street, right? And so this is our one shot for adding on parking, and so I think it would be more ideal if the parking ramp was larger, if you dug into the hill and created more spots, along the bottom, or added an additional level. But so anyhow, I guess if you're structurally making it sound enough that it can be added on into the future, that's a step in the right direction. And then also, because there's just, there is a considerable amount of public funds that are going into this particular parking ramp. And so I guess I'm not quite as concerned about the bidding process, but rather that there are some additional amenities that perhaps the city would like to see placed within that ramp. I did mention at the meeting that I would very much like to see an electric charging station, included within the ramp, within the public spaces, so that is available to folks who have electric cars. And I'm also interested in the prospects of placing, perhaps in the future, I'm not saying this very moment or anything like that, solar panels on the top. You're beginning to see that more and more with parking ramps. And it's an awesome way to, provide coverage, for the vehicles that are on that lot. And also, it would be a wonderful thing to see coming off the bridge that our city is progressive and we take renewable energy seriously. And so I think it would show that we, as a community, are moving in the right direction. So I realize that this isn't the final renderings, right, of the ramp, and that there'll be further
Correct. There's,
chance in the future. But I just really wanted to put on record that those are my concerns with it. And I want to say thank you. I think that you're doing a terrific job, both you, John, and Mr. Reagan. So thanks.
Okay, council, I'll seek a motion to get on the floor the authorized submittal of the revisions to number 1 and number 2. Councilmember Brox makes that motion. Second, is there a second to that motion? Second by Councilmember Balsanic. Okay, that motion is now before us. Discussion, Councilmember Balsanic.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Two concerns that I have. Again, the ramp. The aesthetics of the ramp. I'm seeing 3 trees on this one view here, the topo map. And I'm kind of hoping that we could do more in terms of softening that ramp. That's very important to me because I see a lot of greenery around the main project there on the north side of 2nd Street, but I'm not really seeing anything over here. So I'm just making that duly noted. And then the second thing is, I guess, a question to John. We've got Mr. Regan saying that there may be future levels added on to the parking ramp, but don't we have a height restriction in the historic downtown area? And if so, how many levels could we add on?
Councilmember, you are correct. We do have a height limit of 47 feet, or the height of the Finch building on that one. So taking a look at a standard parking deck with maybe 9 or 10 feet clearance, you could go up a few stories on that one, I think.
How many?
I'm taking a guess off the top of my head of maybe 4, maybe more than that, and that's a hypothetical based upon, I think, the 47-foot height of the Finch building and looking at the floor plates of that.
Okay, that being something that is in the future, remembering that to the west of the parking ramp, across the street there on Eddy, that is a residential area. And I'm really concerned that we would be going 40-some feet in the air with a parking ramp right up against residential housing. So, and I hear all these stories about bedrock. Perhaps it might be better to go into the side of the hill and just blast out of there, just get it all done and do it that way and keep it as low as possible. But those are single-family residences,
Sure.
Property owners there. off of Second and Eddy, there in the southwest quadrant of the project area.
Yeah, and I think many would share your concern on that, council member, with the, that height and being consistent with the buildings next door to it. There will be other steps that'll come forward after tonight. Tonight, we're looking at amending a grant agreement to allow funding use for a facility. The final design of the facility will need to be brought back with the direction that we've received tonight on that one. That'll go forward to Planning Commission, go forward to council, and ultimately forward here for your final approval on that. Along with that, we'll also have an agreement on maintenance responsibilities, obligations, so that we're straightforward as to who is going to maintain this and what role they will have over time.
All right, thank you.
Okay, is there any further discussion on the motion? Councilmember Brox? No question? Okay. Seeing that there's no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails. Thanks. And then, is there anything else is required? We're all
I
set?
don't think so, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I'm also glad to see that the parking ramp is going to be on Second Street. I've had a couple of business owners on the west end of downtown tell me how they're looking forward to that parking ramp there and adding the 99 spots. They think that'll help their business as well. So I'm glad that's going forward, or will come forward.
Thank you for your support, and we are as excited, if not more, than we ever have been for this. We think also this is a good solution and makes best use of the Met Council funds that we all want to make the best use of possible. And we would look forward to continuing to forge ahead.
Looking forward to that process as well. Thank you, Mr. Regan. Okay, next, council, we have before us a variance request, a side yard setback request, side yard setback variance. As we begin, I just need to tell you that we need 6 out of 7 council member votes to approve this, since it's a variance request in accordance to our charter. John?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. The property they have before you is 1380 Hillside Street. They are requesting a 1.5-foot variance to the side yard setback requirement. The area in red here shows the expansion being proposed by the property owner, Gerald Byer, on the property. And as you can see, the property itself, the building, is not parallel with the property line. What Mr. Byer is proposing to do is to run an addition that would follow the line of his house, but as you go further to the west, it becomes closer to the property line. This district here is zoned R1 and has a 10-foot side yard setback requirement. So he's proposing that at the very edge of this towards the west, the minimum extent setback would be about 8.5 feet. Bear in mind that in the R2 district, we do have a 7-foot setback requirement, just to give some perspective on that one. We did hold this before the Planning Commission on July 17th. The Planning Commission voted 5-0 to recommend approval at that time. They have the conditions or the reasons for granting the variance within your packet, within the resolution. They noted the uncommonly narrow double garage doesn't fit 2 vehicles. The offsetting the garage to the north meets the setback requirements of the addition, and it would further narrow the middle of the garage from 18 to 16.5 if the provisions were to be brought forward with the strict 10-foot interpretation there, and that the property was constructed prior to the purchase of the existing property owner. So we are moving forward with a recommendation of approval on this property, and I can stand for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for that presentation. Appreciate it. Council, what's your wish? Councilmember Lightfeld. Councilmember Lightfeld makes a motion to approve. Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Councilmember Brox. That motion is now before the body. Is there any additional discussion to that motion? Councilmember Balsanic.
Thank you, Your Honor. Have there been any plans submitted for this at all? I'm wondering about drainage. I'm wondering about the pitch of the roof. I'm seeing what appears to be a bit of a slope going away from the house on the side yard. what have we got going with it? Do we know yet?
Councilmember, I'm not sure what the status of the building permit plans are on this one. I do note within the packet that there is a floor plan showing the property itself, but as far as any construction plans related to the addition, I don't know the status of that at this point. But as part of any building addition that we would have with the building department, we would be taking into effect the drainage of the property, making sure that it's not going to have a negative effect on adjoining properties on the review of those plans.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion for the body. Councilmember Lund?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just to clarify, the building already is not 10 feet, is that right? I mean, it's already kind of kind of breaking the 10-foot rule there, right?
You are correct. It looks like the corner of the garage as shown here is about 9 foot 6 inches, so a few inches into that setback requirement already. And we do have a provision within our code that if it was to be if the addition could occur, provided that the setback would become no shorter, that could be done without a variance. But because the property line is askew here, the further you go back, the closer it becomes, and hence the need for the variance.
And one more, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor.
Councilmember?
Neighbors, have they been informed and?
Should have brought that up here, yes. We did send notification out to the neighboring property owners. We have not heard any comments at this point at Planning Commission or elsewhere.
Okay. We have a motion before the body. Is there any further discussion to the motion? Seeing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. One nay. The motion still prevails. Okay. Next, we have comments from the audience. Are there any comments from the audience tonight? Any comments from the audience? Okay, if not, council announcements. Announcements? Any announcements? Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. About a week and a half ago, I had attended a neighborhood meeting over in the Cowtown neighborhood at Lake Isabel, and it was really a wonderful opportunity to connect with the folks of that neighborhood and to hear what their concerns were. One of the primary issues that I spoke to them about at length was the impact of EAB on our community, coming up in the next 5 years, what that's going to mean. And because it was really such a really productive, very productive conversation, I've decided to hold a couple small meetings, community meetings in Ward 1, and they'll be totally open to the public. I spoke to Mecca at the Breakaway Arts Center, and so she would love to host some meetings, and so I've made arrangements with her to have meetings there at the Breakaway Arts Center on Saturday, August 12th, starting at 9 a.m. in the lower level, and then a second meeting on Sunday, August 12th at 11 a.m. And so I'll send out details, and I haven't lined up additional support. One of my takeaways meeting with the Cowtown neighborhood was that they have some really specific questions about how do you identify an ash tree? I'm not even sure how to do that. And then so they had questions that clearly take some expertise in to be able to answer, and so I'll look into that further. And so if anyone has any input that they would like, or if you'd like to attend as well, I'm more than willing to work with any of the council members on that. And then also, I just wanted to point out that this upcoming, well, not tomorrow, but a week from tomorrow, Tuesday, August 1st is National Night Out, which will be an opportunity throughout our city for neighborhoods to come together and have block parties. I'm not sure if, Mayor, you were going to speak about that at...
Yeah, I have it down as one of my announcements, but that's okay. Go right ahead.
I'm not going to steal your thunder. I'm just going to say, you can go on.
I'm not a thunderstorm, so you go right ahead.
I just wanted to say that we're planning a neighborhood block party at the Leduc Mansion in the backyard. in Ward 1, when I was out door knocking, I heard folks say that they, a lot of times, especially in that middle part of Ward 1, folks don't know their neighbors very well, that there's been a lot of turnover. And when I was, asking, have there been block parties in that neighborhood, they've said, I've heard that there hasn't been. And so, working with Amy Deaver, the site manager of the Leduc, and she's also one of my neighbors, it turns out. She actually lives on 15th Street, so she's a part of the neighborhood. So we've been planning also with Christy Schaefer, who is another neighbor, our event. So anyhow, starting at 5:30 at the Leduc, we're having a party, and so it's open to anyone if they would like to come. But specifically, we were honing in on that area east of Highway 61 from the mill down to 10th Street.
Okay,
So that was it.
thank you.
All right, thanks.
Is there any further announcements, council? Okay. In relation to EAB, I'm glad you brought that up. At the city Machinery Hill, we had a representative there from Rivertown Tree Service, who actually had bark and samples of what EAB looks like on a tree. And it's very hard to find, what they look like. Trevor, you were there when I was there, and so I think it really is good. We had the postcard sent out this past week about EAB and some of the symptoms. I hope people will call or go to these meetings and get more educated about it. But I thought it was a fine presentation at that Machinery Hill. I think people also got informed there too, who may have stopped by. It says, first time I ever saw what an emerald ash borer looks like, and what they do to a tree bark. So it was pretty interesting stuff. A few more announcements that we have on Wednesday, this Wednesday on July 26th. The Finance Committee will convene from 7:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., so they have a long day, working on the 2018 budget, and that is chaired by Councilmember Vaughn, along with Balsanic and Brox. And that's again this Wednesday from 7:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. On Thursday, July 27th, the parks, I think is the National Park Service involved in that? The National Parks and Recreation Celebration at Levy Park this Thursday from 5 to 8 p.m. We'll have live music, food, activity, and lots of fun. So down at the riverfront, down at the pavilion, Levy Park, it should be a lot of fun, 5 to 8 this Thursday, July 27th. On Monday, a week from tonight, on July 31st, the Planning Commission will be meeting here at 7 p.m. at City Hall. The following night, as Councilmember Foltz had indicated, is National Night Out, or I guess now they call it Unite Tonight, or Tonight Unite, or something like that. Yeah, Night to Unite, something. And so city officials and staff will be visiting community celebrations all throughout our city, including the Leduc party. And so we want to thank especially our public safety advisory commissioners for their leadership on this initiative. On Thursday, August 3rd, the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee will meet at 7 p.m. at Hastings City Hall to continue their discussions on the 2040 Comprehensive Plan. On Monday, August 7th, the Finance Committee, you guys have been busy. Councilmember Vaughn as a chair, and Councilmembers Balsanic and Brox will meet again at 6 p.m. to hear a presentation of the 2016 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, and the auditors will be present that evening, and then later on at 7 p.m. The City Council will be meeting at 7 p.m. next on Monday, August 7th, and as part of that meeting will also be that comprehensive financial audit, that report, so we'll have that later. Council, we have no other business before us. A motion to adjourn is in order. Councilmember Vaughn makes that motion to adjourn, seconded by Councilmember Lund. All those in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails, and we are adjourned. Thank you.